Business of Property podcast. I'm Simon, and I've been investing in property for over 20 years. And if you're an active landlord or planning your next property investment, this podcast is for you. A couple of weeks ago, in episode 252, I talked about 8 reasons to use a letting agent to help you manage your rental properties. And those reasons show that using an agent is very definitely the best and correct choice for many landlords. There are very good, very real reasons, and a lot of people should choose that option. However, there are also a lot of landlords out there who will do better and may just prefer the option of self-managing their property. So today, I'm going to talk about 8 reasons why you should self-manage your properties. So let's start at the beginning. Number 1 on my list is money, basically. And if you're using a letting agent, typically you'll be paying 10, 12, 15, maybe as high as 18 or even 20% of your rental income to that letting agent. And if you're not paying that letting agent, if you're doing this work yourself, then you get to keep that income. Now, it's not always that sort of cut and dry, because the letting agent may well have some expenses in there which you would then have yourself, especially if they're sort of covering some of the sort of referencing and credit checks, and some maybe taking photos where you might need to employ a professional photographer to do those elements. So there will still be some expense, but it won't be anywhere near the cost of that letting agent. And that sort of 15-ish% of your rent, I mean, that's a big chunk of your rent. That could very easily be the difference between profit and loss if you've got sort of increasing expenses in the form of mortgage interest, or if you're, say, an HMO landlord and you've got increasing expenses in terms of utility bills and things like that, or even without increasing bills anywhere, it is still just a big chunk of your income. And you may just want to make that be your income rather than money going out to a letting agent. So I think money is probably one of the biggest drivers for choosing self-management. However, it's definitely not the only reason. So number 2 on my list is kind of money related again, but it's specifically around having a tighter control of expenses. And this is not really probably a huge amount of money, but it does mean you've got a bit more control over where your money is going, and that you perhaps get a better value for that money. So, for example, a letting agent may have their known or preset suppliers for certain things, be that services or goods or whatever that you might need in the course of running a rental property. And they may well not be the cheapest. They may not be the best. And perhaps that letting agent is even getting some kind of kickback or referral fee for choosing these people. But if you're self-managing, you can make sure that you go out and you get a couple of quotes and talk to the suppliers and check that they really do know what they're doing, and that you really will get value for money from whatever it is that you agree to actually pay them. So I think that can be a very important factor, even if it's not hugely different in terms of actual financial sort of cost. However, it does also lead on to number 3 on my list, which is having an attention to detail. And a lot of the time, if you've got a letting agent looking after your property, it's not their property. They're not going to care about it nearly as much as you are. So when you're looking after your own property, you can really make sure that the details are looked after. So when you get repairs done, you'll actually go and look at the property afterwards and make sure those repairs have been done correctly. You will actually follow up with work that is done and making sure that the quality is there and the finishing touches are put into the process. If you're marketing your property, you will check and double check the property details and the photos and the floor plan, and actually make sure that they really are correct. And I think that in turn, especially on the marketing side, and paying attention to those details sort of early on in a new tenant sort of process, leads on to number 4 in my list, which is as a self-managing landlord, you can probably secure better tenants. And this isn't 100%, this isn't guaranteed or anything, but if you take that time to put the effort into the advert, into making sure that that's of a good quality and will attract good quality tenants through that, then that gets you off to a good start. And because you're managing the process, because you're talking to the tenants or the prospective tenants and managing that sort of initial checking process, and then leading on, of course, to the credit referencing and that sort of side of things as well, you have that control. You have those checks where a letting agent may not pay as much attention, again, to the detail, to checking these things. They may not care quite as much. You will. It's your property. It's your tenants that you're going to be putting in there. It's your sort of future work that you're creating or not by choosing the right tenant for your property. And hence, I think you can make sure that when you're self-managing, you can better vet the tenants and you can end up with better tenants, hopefully. Now, so number 5, this is an interesting one, I think, to phrase. And I'm going to phrase it as saving time. Now, it is the case that when there is maintenance or anything uncertain or unknown or any extra details to be decided on your property, that decision will always come back to you. And that means that it is always going to take your time. And a letting agent will perhaps help organize things or pre-check details or whatever, but it is ultimately you who has to make the decision. And in order to do that, you really need to dig in and you need to find out those details. You need to check what the letting agent is presenting to you. You may need to do some research on what the work is that he's doing and what the best approach would be. You may need to talk to the tradespeople to actually find out what they're suggesting and whether you agree with that as a correct approach. So I think if you're doing that directly, it may not be saving your time, but I think overall it will probably save sort of elapsed time and certainly save people's time, because it's going to avoid that duplication of effort where the letting agent is involved. So I think I can safely say that saving time is actually a benefit. Overall, maybe not very specifically to you, because you may not quite be saving time, but overall the process, I think, will save time if you're self-managing and looking after these things directly yourself. Number 6. Now, this may not apply to everyone. It depends on your approach to property investment. However, if what you want to achieve is a long-term property business, and if that's your objective, then self-managing your property, I think, is a much better way to build that business. And it could be just because you're more hands-on, you're not losing that cost out to a letting agent, so hence you've got more funds to recycle back into the business. Or it may be because actually you can take this knowledge from managing your own properties and turn that back into something that you sell on to others, especially if your properties are HMOs or service accommodation properties. Then that really is very much building a business. That's more than just hands-off investment. And once you've built those skills up through your own self-management, you may well choose to actually offer that as a service to other people as well. And of course, that is a slightly different kind of property business you're then building, but it means you've got those options and you could do that. And if you get your portfolio up to a certain scale, then it may be that you take a different approach and you are then bringing other people in to run the day-to-day for you. But that is all part of your business. You have built that business function within your business rather than outsourcing that business function. And hence that value lives in your business. That is something that you have built and you are building as time goes on. And I think that can be a real asset to your property business over time. Number 7, compliance. Now, the buck will always stop with you as the landlord, as the property owner. letting agents are great at helping you work out the day-to-day of compliance. They'll help guide you through what needs to be done and indeed arranging it and getting things done. But if they make a mistake, the problem is actually yours, because it is your responsibility to maintain the compliance and keep everything up to date. And as it's your responsibility, you actually do need to know what you've got to do to meet the compliance regulations. Even if a letting agent is helping you achieve it, or maybe even guiding you through the process, helping you learn, etc., you do still need to know. And you have got to check. And you have got to make sure that the letting agent is doing it right. You can't just outsource that responsibility. You aren't able to. And if you're self-managing, you can use a tool such as PATMA that can help you to stay on top of compliance. And it really is quite minimal effort. You do need to know the rules, you do need to learn the rules, but there's lots of information out there. And again, tools such as PATMA can help guide you through that process so you aren't missing out on anything and you aren't getting steps of the processes wrong and things like that. So it's your responsibility, and it's not that hard to actually do this yourself. Once you're taking that responsibility and making sure that things are in place at the right time and maintained, then you're already doing it. You may as well just do that rather than outsourcing those elements of it, or that sort of knowledge, because you need the knowledge anyway. So number 8, it's not really that hard. So why not? Why wouldn't you self-manage? Now, this of course does depend on your portfolio a bit, but generally speaking, especially if you're starting with a portfolio of buy-to-lets, it really isn't that hard to self-manage. You have to learn the compliance. You have to work out what's required, but you have to do that anyway. You have to make decisions on how to maintain your property and which work to have done, what to have fixed, etc. But you've got to make those decisions anyway. You have to choose your tenants. This is a little bit different for if you weren't self-managing, but that comes with huge benefits of being able to exercise extra control and extra knowledge over how you choose those tenants and making sure that you secure the better or the best tenants that you possibly can. And of course, there's the huge financial benefit that I started with as well. So I think there's a lot of reward for not that much effort. And there are great tools out there, or there is of course a great tool out there, PATMA, that will help you keep all of this in order and make sure that you are working really as efficiently as possible, saving time and saving money, so your portfolio works well for you. Of course, if you are working in a slightly more intensive strategy, such as HMOs or service accommodation or something, then it's not quite as easy. There is more involved. There are more moving parts, typically more tenants and things as well. But again, the tools are there. PATMA will help you look after these processes, help you stay on top of things. And it still isn't that hard. And you are building a core business function, a real value in your property business going forwards. So that's it for this week. I hope that was useful to you. And if you did find that useful, I would really appreciate you passing this podcast episode on to another property person or two that you're aware of. I really do appreciate it when you help spread the word, and it really does help the audience to grow. Thank you for listening, and I will talk to you again next week.